The U.S. State Department says ISIS mastermind Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi died in a U.S. raid last weekend in northwestern Syria. To talk more about it and other big events from around the globe is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, reports say the operation only lasted a couple of hours and he, along with three of his kids, died?
Yes, it looks like it was a suicide after he was chased to the back of the tunnel where he was hiding out. This was his hideout. This was his headquarters. It's in Idlib, Syria, a place where, terrorism is rampant. And, it was almost too easy. No one would have thought that he was there, but obviously they got tips. They chased him to the back of this tunnel. He had three kids with him, and he detonated his suicide vest. As you may know, in the religion of Islam, or some would argue in the distorted version of the religion of Islam, it's believed that you become a martyr if you die for the cause, and he believed in the cause of terrorism, which an extremist form of Islam, and he wanted to die a martyr and not be killed at the hands of the enemy. So he was, pursued to the end of this tunnel and then let off his suicide vest.
But why take the kids with you? Why not? If you want to be a martyr, that's fine. Go out, do it on your own. But why take the children? Why should they have to suffer? Why lose their lives, right?
Right, that's a great question coming from a sane person in the West. I think, when you look at how many children and women uh, he himself and his organization have raped and killed and abused, hanged, set on fire. I mean, the list goes on, including Canadians, Americans. There's so many stories that we've reported on over the years. I mean, he's a cruel man, but I think he just didn't want the children to be tortured or any information to be taken from them if they became, interrogated. He just didn't want them in the hands of the enemy. So again, he becomes a martyr. The children become martyred, and in his eyes, that was the way to win.
Al-Baghdadi was killed in a hotbed of terror groups and foreign fighters along the Syria-Turkey border. Do you think this will maybe lead to more rise of the insurgents in the area?
Yeah, it's a great question also because, this morning I thought to myself, well, was there any deal kind of struck between Turkey and the United States in his capture? What did Turkey have to do with this? What did Iraq have to do with this? I mean, everyone is all applause, about this capture, which obviously it's a win for all. I mean, no one is upset about the loss of ISIS's leader. But at the same time, how did we now come upon him? What information was known in the past? And the funny story that comes about this is that there was an aide involved, and there was also a capturing of, they were watching their patterns. So they would be traveling in cars that were filled with fruit or vegetables, and trucks that were filled with fruits and vegetables. So it made it look like they're just, one of the other farmers or people who are just going to market or whatever they were doing. But again, this was near a very important border, a very important entry, an area where there is a lot of activity right now, and who knows how much more can be uncovered from this area. But for now, the number one and number two, it was announced this morning that the number two in ISIS was also taken out by this U.S. raid.
Okay, Lisa, let's talk about Brexit now. The European Union is considering a flexible 3-month extension. It's hoping to endorse a Brexit delay to January 31st with an earlier departure possible. Tell me more about that.
It's going to be 2020, and we're still going to be talking about, will exit be a yes or a no? He loves me not. I mean, they've run out of flowers in the UK over this. But if you think about it, Brexit, the vote was before the Donald Trump presidency vote. And what's interesting about that is that we're already talking about the next round of elections here in the United States. You had elections in Canada, and we're still talking about whether or not Brexit will be a yes or a no. But think about how symbolic we thought Brexit would be, and it was for its time. But I think it's lost a lot of its oomph, whether or not it goes through or doesn't go through. I mean, the fact that it's been kicked around so much, with so many political favors on both sides, I think it's really lost that knockout punch that it was created to have. And whether or not they stay in the EU, I think is going to be less consequential than it was initially intended to be.
Over in Asia, gangs are taking advantage of the Hong Kong protests and stretch police resources by smuggling luxury goods between the city and mainland China.
Yes, well, if anyone has ever been to Hong Kong, they know that they love their luxury goods there. There's a crazy percentage of that, and I can't cite it offhand right now, but of world luxury goods that are absorbed by just Hong Kong, which is amazing. But obviously, the story is this: the bottom line being that there are many who are taking advantage of this uncertainty that is currently happening in Hong Kong, and creating business opportunities for themselves. And one of them being obviously in luxury goods and being able to travel back and forth, and having the Chinese government give it a pass because it's low-hanging fruit. You're not going to go after the people who are smuggling luxury goods, but rather go after those who are creating the protests or leading the protests, etc.
On another note, Hong Kong business people are now setting their sights on North America. That includes high-tech professionals, bankers, and financiers.
Yes, and those are the lucky ones, right? You look at the upper echelons of society, and for them, this could be a very, very great opportunity to move abroad and have better opportunities like they've always wanted to. Always when there's a time of crisis, you have fewer, visa bans and things like that. We talk about travel bans in this country, but whenever there's an opportunity, especially when there's a brain drain, right? So you talk about the upper classes or the educated sectors of society moving out and obviously contributing much to our society here. Now, what's going to happen? We're going to talk about intellectual espionage on this end, right, in the West, which we already have a problem with China. So I think this conversation is going to lead on and on and on. But I also want to point out that the lower socioeconomic brackets are also moving out of Hong Kong and looking for more opportunity, but not in North America, but rather in places like Vietnam and the Philippines and countries like that, where they could find work and where the economies are much more friendly for menial jobs and such.
Tens of thousands of protesters in Lebanon formed a very long human chain, Lisa, and it was all part of a cross-sectarian mobilization.
Yeah, it's a beautiful moment. I mean, these are kind of the nuggets that we take out of these more foreign policy stories, and especially the global protests that are going on. There's such a shift going on in the Middle East, and it continues to go on, where they are calling out for more rights. They want a better life, and in Lebanon in particular, this chain is to symbolize that the different groups across Lebanon are all united. We saw something similar in Iran, where there wasn't a chain formed, but it was with the hashtag protests across Iran to symbolize that the farmer and the high-tech businessman are both joined and united in their efforts to protest and to rise against the government. And here you have the same thing. You have Christians and Muslims, and you have young and old and rich and poor, hand in hand across multiple cities, going through the capital city of Beirut to show that they are united and that their cause is just one, and they have grievances against the government that are in unison.
Meanwhile, in Iraq, Iraqi special forces were deployed to Baghdad after 60 protesters were killed there.
Yes, they're cracking down, and they're cracking down because the protests are getting serious. What we're seeing in Iraq is very similar to what we saw in Egypt after the Arab Spring, and that was very shortly there after that they had their initial protest, they came out again with a protest. So in Iraq, it hasn't even been 2 years where they established themselves as independent of ISIS. We are our own people. We can have elections. We can have leaders. We want to be free of any foreign intervention or anyone telling us what to do. And that was a beautiful thing. But now they're saying this is not what we wanted. We want better. It's the proper use of this kind of protest to say we came out and protested, but we wanted something better, and now we're going to protest again until we get that better. And we talked about this with different cases in different types of different countries that were having protests where they are in perpetual protest mode. I don't know if that's going to be the case here in Iraq. It might be, but for now they're asking for something much better to go on with their future.
Lisa, 80,000 Catalans are rallying for Spanish unity after a night of violence between police and separatist hardliners. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is an ongoing story as well. I mean, there hasn't been much global attention paid to Catalonia, which is the province where Barcelona is in Spain. They want their independence. They want to break off from Spain. Obviously, there's voices pro and against this, and it's been, very bloody, very violent. But they want out, and they continue to protest, and it hasn't died down. again, going along the theme of these global protests and wanting better. And if there is a time to do so, you do it now, because you can have your voice potentially heard. You can use this tool, this political tool, to ask for what you want.
Some exciting news out of Colombia as Bogota elected its first female mayor. Now, what do we know about this new mayor, and will she have much power to crack down on the drug lords, the drug cartels?
Yeah, it seems like anybody who's looking to be in government in Colombia should really be considered a very brave person, particularly a woman who wants to be the first of. Look, Colombia has had a very long, long history, a violent history, with regards to politics, especially even local politics, and the surrounding drug lords around her. So I think she's going to have a very challenging time to go forward and to, be the politician she wants to be, particularly again as the first. She's already a historic figure. She's already somebody who's celebrated. And whether or not she can get involved, and if she doesn't get involved, what are the risks? Will she be threatened? Will she be killed? Will they go after her family? I mean, this is not child's play. So wish her the best, but we'll see if the surrounding areas allow for her to have a proper political run.
Another big story we've been watching here on Bridge City News are the amount of wildfires in California, northern and southern California, where you are. Tell me, how bad is it right now around LA?
It's actually very close to LA. This is surrounding the Getty Museum area, which is about a mile or two from where I am. Thousands of families have been evacuated. About 6 homes from the last reports I saw have burned down. And people are not risking it. They've closed down the most important freeway. My father had a doctor's appointment today at UCLA, and he went there and he said half of the nurses and doctors couldn't even get to work today because the main freeway here, the 405, has been shut down. You have, amazing stories that come out of these kinds of wildfires, where you have people helping each other and people providing shelter and opening their homes and their hearts and supplies for firefighters and snacks and things like that. But there's also stories of people getting into what appears to be a fake cop car and going in and robbing the homes that have been evacuated, because there's obviously no alarm system. They have to leave them open so that the firemen can get in, etc. So, there's those stories as well. The question begs, in areas like where you are, Hal, there's snow, so the plowers are ready. The government's ready. I assume this is how it was when I lived in New York. The salters are ready to go out, and you wonder. I mean, we have Santa Ana winds. We have fire season. I mean, how does it get this bad? How does it go this far? Does it need to be further regulated? Even though I'm not against the regulation of it, but PG&E filed bankruptcy last year over these fires, and now yet again we are upon fire season, and it's so catastrophic. So it's sad, because these are real homes, real people, and we really pray for everyone's safety here.
And how about the air quality as well? I know here in southern Alberta, when we had the Keno wildfires, hundreds of thousands of hectares that were burned, people couldn't leave their homes even though it was very hot, and they didn't have air conditioning, keep the windows closed. Is it impacting you as well?
Absolutely. You can see the smog, we have a smog problem here in Los Angeles anyway, but you can see, if I look out the window right here, you can see the fires in the distance. You can see the gray smoke, but you can also see that there is a smokiness, or a smog, a thickness to the air quality. All the windows are closed. They've advised people who can work from home to work from home and not to go out, especially the elderly, the sick, those who cannot afford to breathe in that air. So again, it's awful. It happens every year, but every year there are people who are real people that you may even know that have their homes burned down or have to evacuate for a long period of time. Firefighters who are going in there and risking their lives. So we're really keeping everyone in our prayers.
Lisa, we'll keep you in our prayers as well. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
And on behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.